Hello, this is group number 3. We are presenting our team interviews for Management 5113 Summer 2023. We have 3 group members. My name is Nicole. I'm in my final year of the MBA program at OSU, and I'll be discussing 3 interviews that I had today with managers and business owners. Laniel, do you want to introduce
Yeah,
yourself?
sure thing. Yeah, my name is Daniel Ogu. I'm also in group number 3. I will also be talking about kind of 3 separate interviews I had with different managers, leaders, some formal leaders, some functional leaders, just kind of from different stages of their career, new, kind of mid, and a little bit later. So that's kind of what I'll be going over today.
I'm Reed Stallsmith, and I'm in my last semester here in the MBA program. And I'll be going over the 3 interviews that I conducted as well with a couple business owners and a lady in a management role.
Great. Okay, so I am going to get started with my first interview. So I interviewed a electrical journeyman. He's also my husband. He has been in a management role for about 3 years. His work primarily is to train apprentices and oversee job sites on industrial and residential construction sites. So this man, I've known him for a long time, but when I did this interview with him, he actually taught me some things that I'd never heard before. So it was a pleasant surprise for me. So one of the questions that I asked him was, how does he be a good leader? What does he think makes a good leader? And he says, don't reward good work with more work. Trust your employees and take their ideas into consideration when making decisions. They will be happier and they'll feel more empowered in their work. Now, that was me kind of paraphrasing, so I'm also going to play the clip.
How do you motivate your team to perform at a high level?
I don't reward like work with more work. Like, so let's say they do an exceptional job, I won't reward them with more work. That's a terrible reward. And I do a lot of trust and idea suggestions. So even if I have a better idea, if they suggest an idea and I have a better idea, I'll go with their idea because one, I want them to learn, and they're much happier implementing their idea than mine.
So you're kind of giving them almost an element of control over their own work, making them feel like they have some accountability and the ability to make choices. So that's great. You're empowering your workers. That's very cool.
And the next item that I learned from Jeremy was get your employees comfortable with asking questions and teaching one another. It helps them to gain confidence in their knowledge and prepares them to be in a leadership position someday too. And this is particularly important in his line of work because apprentices someday become journeymen, which then have to train apprentices. So it's kind of like one day you're going to have to do this too. So you should learn how to teach others on your way up. So I'll play the clip for that question as well.
How do you encourage the development of your team members?
So with apprentices, they range from expertise levels, knowledge base, and I try to put someone who's knowledgeable with somebody who isn't, and they can teach him. And then that person on the next task, it might be something similar. I'll put the person who was just taught, not the knowledgeable one. I'll let him go do something by himself. He'll teach the next person who doesn't know. So they get used to teaching each other and asking each other questions because they have the answers. A lot of them have the answers. And if not, then they can go check the code book because what I do isn't magical. It's just a set of rules.
That's great, Steve.
Okay. I also noticed while speaking with him that as a leader, he's also quite humble. He doesn't, boss people around, and he doesn't think that he's more special than anybody else. So that was something else that I learned throughout that interview. But I didn't put it down on the slides due to time constraints and space constraints. For my second interview, I spoke with a gentleman named Keegan. He's based out of Canada, and he's an owner-operator of a marina. He's been a marine technician slash mechanic for over a decade, and I thought his answers were really interesting because he's also in a much different work environment than I am, being in business and in a desk job. So his something that I learned from him is to be patient and understanding. There are a lot of things that go on in other people's lives that you may not be aware of. And he also mentioned that tailoring training for each employee is also important when you're teaching them new things. I'll play that audio clip now.
In your opinion, what makes a manager more effective?
Understanding this can be. There's always something going on in everyone's lives that you may not be aware of. And bringing your training to the person's strong suit is a bonus.
And then my third interview is with a woman named Mashika. She is an engineer on the East Coast, or I believe she might be based out of Vermont now. But her interview is incredible. I wish I had more space because I would have put 10 quotes by her, but there was one in particular called "Message Received is Message Sent." So the message you send may not be what a person comprehends. You must understand the individual you're communicating with to have better communication and management. And I'll go ahead and play that clip now.
In your opinion, what makes a manager more effective?
I think that a manager can be more effective if they understand their teams and, the dynamic of the team. They understand how the individuals in that team, learn or receive information, because it's hard to communicate things to people if you don't understand how they will receive what you're trying to say. A mentor of mine always says that message received is message sent. So even though you might send a particular message, understanding who the individuals are in your team and understanding the dynamic of your team can make for better management, in my opinion.
So that is the end of my clips. Overall, these 3 interviews, I think that they will contribute a lot to my management style going forward. I thought that this exercise was very informative. Now we will go on to Laniel's interview. So I'm gonna pass it off to you, Laniel.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. That was a really good job. Those are pretty informative interviews you had there. So for kind of my lessons learned, or my interviews rather, I had kind of like I mentioned before, kind of a set theme I wanted to kind of follow. My first interview was with someone named Jonah. We had actually worked together at the same company for a little bit. And he's kind of around my age. So, just about 5 years out of school, early career. And he actually just recently became a supervisor over an IT department. My second interview was with Trey. He is currently a project manager, so not necessarily like a formal manager. He's more of a functional manager where he has a team that he has to manage for different projects. And then my last interview was with Michael, who is a functional manager. He is actually a manager of a managers, so essentially a director over an engineering group at his company. So one of the first lessons I learned, and this was from my interview with Jonah, I kind of asked him how he encourages his team members to develop their career and their interests. And one thing he said was, in order to kind of help them do that, you have to really keep an open line of communication in your team, so that your employees feel comfortable enough to come to you with things that they like and things that they want to pursue. So Nicole, if you could play that link.
Absolutely.
And the best development, I think, generally is something that the individual is actually interested in. Trying to force someone to develop into an area or into a skill set that they, maybe don't have any interest in or even dislike is going to be a real challenge. So find those areas that people are naturally interested in, and then building that trust that, if you tell me something you're interested in, I'm going to do my best to find areas within reason that we can expand those skills. So I think the main thing so far that I've discovered is that open communication and really being in constant contact about big goals of what you want to do in your career, what are some immediate things that you want to learn, and just having those dialogue channels open.
Okay.
And the best development, I think, generally is something that.
Yeah, so that was something I thought that was what Jonah said was pretty powerful about, really be empathizing with your team and understanding, kind of like Nicole was saying, that everyone does have their own story, their interests, what they're going through, and being able to kind of keep that open line of communication so that they can, so they can understand that, hey, I have a manager that's very flexible and that wants to see me grow in my job and in my career. So I thought that was really nice to hear from someone as young as Jonah, or really, someone my age, that's something they had really come to understand with just being into a manager role is being able to gain the trust of your employees so that they feel comfortable speaking up. Another lessons learned I taken, and this was from my interview with Trey. He said, and this is kind of a summary of what I took, but what I kind of learned was that leaders take ownership of issues and do their best to resolve them in order to lead by example and not just by title or position. So Nicole, you can play that clip as well.
So what would you say being a leader means to you?
One thing, and I saw this question, I wrote it down. You see it, you own it. So if you see something that's broken or you see something that needs to be fixed, try to do anything and everything you can to improve upon that. A good example is when you're on a construction site and you see trash on the ground. If you pick it up, that is contagious. Other people are going to keep the site better, right? And that site being cleaned up leads to safety and other things that really does it. So taking ownership of the problem goes a long ways. So that's what I'd say.
So what would you?
So yeah, I really liked that point that Trey made about, being a leader doesn't just mean having, control or authority over a certain group of people. It also means just leading in your own life and having that kind of trickle down into the people that you oversee, right? So he made the example of, you see something and you own it, right? You immediately take ownership of it and you step up to the plate and you walk the walk, not just talk the talk. And I really liked that aspect of that kind of perspective on what being a leader is. So the next slide. Another lessons learned I took, and this was from my interview with Michael. He said, don't just wait for a formal title to start being a leader. Leadership is really a skill that anyone can exhibit, not just formal leaders. And it's more of the leadership title is earned after you've shown people that you're capable of leading, right? It's not necessarily just given to those that, that just makes the most sense. It's given to those that have proven that they can lead other people. So you kind of have to use your influence in the group before you get the authority. So if you could play that clip for us, Nicole.
Becoming a leader in an individual contributor role, starts to say, okay, well, this person is demonstrating this skill of leadership, and so they will now be a good manager, right? I think when we see managers that fail at their position or at their role, is when we promote somebody that maybe is the best technically at their job, like they're the best engineer, or they're the best accountant, or they're the best whatever, the best maintenance technician, but they're not a good leader yet. And so they get in that position of leadership as the best technically skilled person, but not the best leadership skilled person. Becoming.
So yeah, so exactly what Mike was saying there. I agree 100%. Just because someone happens to be the most technically skilled in that field or the smartest person in the room doesn't necessarily mean that they exhibit leadership qualities. So leaders aren't always the smartest people in the room. They're always the most rich. With people, they're just kind of the people that have the best ideas and are the most capable of in influencing others and helping motivate other people. So I thought that's really good. That idea of using your influence before you have the authority. And the next lessons learned I have is that a leader's role is really to improve impediments in the team's way and steer them in the right direction towards a unified goal. So kind of like what Michael was saying in the last one, a leader's role really is to make sure that their team has no obstacles in the way and is going in the right direction. So you can play that clip.
The worst thing you could do is just think that individual contributor is just an island, and that they are smart enough to fix it by themselves. A lot of feedback is really good. So if they're off course, steer them back. There was a boss that I had at one time that said, everybody I don't hire anybody but IndyCar race car drivers, right? So they can go up to 500 miles an hour. The big thing I've got to do is make sure if they need to go to Dallas, I don't let them go towards Galveston on I-45 and end up in the Gulf, because that would be disastrous, right? So I got to make sure I point them in the right direction before they take off. And so I like that analogy, because everybody's like, oh yeah, you get further away from where you need to go if they're not paying attention. So that's what a good leader does, is make sure that everybody's paying attention. The worst thing you could do is just.
Yeah, so really, really great analogy by Trey there is that, leaders, we want people to go fast. We want to get to the goal as fast as possible, as quickly as possible, and achieve the most success. But really what you got to make sure is that, your team's not heading in, direction A when you need them to be heading direction B. So a leader kind of helps guide their team towards the correct goal by being the one that kind of steps in and helps when needed, and maybe gets down and dirty in the details sometimes. You can go to the next slide. And really two of these last lessons. First one, making sure that a leader just makes sure that you motivate your team members by making them feel valuable and showing them the finish line. So Nicole, you can go ahead and play that clip.
I think when it comes to motivation, kind of two things that I think are really important is, people want to do a good job for something that they that they feel is valuable, right? And so helping people on your team understand what is it that they're doing that they think is valuable, and help point that out, right? I mean, if it's moving natural gas or building pipelines or whatever it is that sort of makes that person say, oh, I'm doing something worthwhile, and help them see the value in what they're doing, then they want to do a good job, right? And then it's a matter of sort of painting what good looks like, so help them see the value in what they're doing, and then paint the picture of what good looks like, right? I mean, I think when it comes to motivate.
So really, really well said by Michael there. Being a leader is about getting people to kind of see really the value in what they're doing, and not just seeing the value in what they're doing, but also understanding what they like and how what they're doing is overall benefit for the team, right? So in a way, a leader is able to kind of just similar to what kind of Trey was saying, steer the team in the right direction by understanding everybody's individual strengths, weaknesses, and making sure that they're all accounted for, and that your team kind of synergizes in a way that everyone understands the goal and wants to work towards that goal. So it's really all about motivation at the end of the day. And then the last lesson learned I understood was really about arguments. So I kind of asked Michael how he dealt with conflict in his team and what he thought about that. And he said, disagreements are fine, it's to be expected. However, what we have to understand is that we have to approach conflicts with an idea of respect, with the kind of theme of respect for the other individual and respect for the perspective and the situation, in order to make a really meaningful decision at the end of the day. So go ahead and play that clip, Nicole.
But we're going to approach that disagreement with respect for the different perspectives and views, right?
Yeah.
And then I think, once you kind of got the respect so that there's some safety and like, it's okay to disagree, right? I mean, sometimes folks are like, well, we should all just always sing Kumbaya and everybody be in agreement. And I'm like, come on, it's the real world, right? I mean, it needs to be safe to disagree if we have different opinions. Let's get all that on the table. And then after that, I think you got to have real clarity on the decision-making process. But we're going to approach that.
Yeah. So exactly like Michael said, just kind of understanding that, we're all working towards a common goal, and the goal is really bigger than any differences that you and I have. But at the same time, understanding that we have to come to a compromise, right? We have to both respect each other's decision and then settle on a path that makes sense for our team or the company or whatever, while kind of putting aside our personal ideas of one another. So that's really kind of the best way he felt like dealing with disagreements, is just having that communication with the other person and respecting them for who they are as a person and respecting the decision you're about to make together. So those are really my main lessons learned from my 3 interviews. And with that said, I'll go ahead and pass it on to Reed so he can give his.
Sweet. Thanks, Daniel. Those were very informative and definitely important. So for my first interview, I chose to do my dad, Jay Stallsmith. He's a CPA here in Tulsa and the owner of Low Ryan Associates, a small accounting firm. So one lesson I drew from this interview is to consistently seek out responsibilities and opportunities that push you outside of your comfort zone. And additionally, capitalizing on opportunities that'll help make your boss's life easier or even make them look better. And so if you can go ahead and play that.
What advice would you give to younger people in order to not only progress in their careers, but continually improve their leadership capabilities?
Well, you get lots of opportunities for leadership opportunities, whether you're looking for it or not. And so I would encourage young people to say, take the attitude, take the responsibility, and take it, even though it may not be comfortable. In fact, most times it's probably not going to be in your comfort zone. But those are often the best builders of your professional leadership capabilities, because a lot of things that when I was your age that came naturally to me, that didn't come naturally to me, now come naturally to me, and I would have had to prepare intensively for them at your age and might have even worried about them, and now I don't even think about them. I just do them. I've done them so many times. So it doesn't mean you got to go looking for every opportunity, but it means don't shoot down every opportunity that you might get. You definitely got to take some of them. And
thank you. And then the other advice that he gave that really stuck out to me was putting extra focus on taking initiative. This is always important, but especially early on in a career, you want to make sure to take initiative, and in situations where it might not be even your direct responsibility, but taking that initiative, and it'll help provide value and leave a positive impact, not only with your supervisor or boss, but also with the clients that you might be serving. So then the second clip.
And if you get an opportunity to make your supervisor look better, I would say that's a good one, because I didn't maybe consciously go looking for opportunities to make my supervisors look better, but I did look for opportunities to take something off their plate if it's something I thought I could handle and learn from. And inadvertently, everybody was appreciative. My supervisor, the clients, etc. And I had clients hand me a lot more responsibilities later in life, where they made the trustees of their trust or something with a high amount of authority over something, and they told me it was because, Jay, you took charge in this earlier situation, and you handled it and didn't shy away from the responsibility or the burden, whatever it may have been. So that's probably a good example for me where I got some really fun opportunities.
I really like that advice. I thought it was good and an important reminder to always be looking to take initiative. And so next slide, please. And so for the second interview, I interviewed John Roop. He's the founder and CEO of Roop Helmer Construction Group, also in Tulsa. So one of the pieces of advice that really stuck with me was the importance that he put on the willingness to take risks. You can't just, he stressed that you can't just sit around and wait for someone to tell you what to do. And this also kind of plays into the taking initiative from the first interview. But also learning to be a problem solver, being someone that can solve problems, is pretty invaluable, and it will always serve you well in your life and career.
Is be willing to take some risk. In business, if you want to succeed, you've got to take some risk, and you've got to be able to solve problems that no one else can solve. And so I always say the people that earn the most are the ones that can solve the biggest problems. So if you can learn to solve the bigger problems and take the risk, then you're going to succeed and you'll be well paid for it.
That's one of the things. That's an important one. And then secondly, he said to focus on continual learning and building networks, and those connections is very important to help develop and advance your career. And this can also help develop both expert and referent power. Getting connected in the community and building bridges wherever possible will make the path to success a lot more attainable. But do you have any other recommendations for those who aspire to be great leaders? One.
Sorry, I messed that up.
Oh, you're good. But do you have any other recommendations for those who aspire to be great leaders one day?
Continually learn. I go back to reading a lot, and make sure you spend the time to network, get in organizations where there's like-minded thinkers. For example, I got into Young Presidents organization, YPO. YPO has provided me a lot of opportunities to connect with local leaders, which also has allowed me to develop my leadership skills, connections. They have a lot of education programs which have helped me. So look for those kind of things within a community that you can join and grow and meet other people.
Yeah. Perfect. And then for my third and final interview, I chose to do my aunt, Stacy. She lives in Norman, Oklahoma, and she's the director of Bridges, which is a nonprofit organization that helps to assist high school students with family crises and provide them with the resources they need to succeed. A lot of times these kids are either don't have parents or are kicked out of their house, and they're essentially homeless, and they provide lodging and resources for them to get back to school and be successful. So one thing that stood out to me from her interview was the importance she placed on delegating tasks and being able to trust the people within the organization to execute tasks. One person can do a lot, but they can't do everything alone. So you got to trust the other people in your organization and work as a team to maximize the potential that organization will have. And she has a good example in this video that I really like. So how do you prioritize and delegate tasks as effectively as possible?
So my very first evaluation as a professional staff person was when I worked for the YMCA of Greater Louisville in Flower Mound, Texas. And my boss's name was a guy, his name was Kim Phillips. And, you know, your evaluation is 0 for low and like a 4 for the highest that you could be. And he told me from the very beginning, he said, Stacy, I don't give 4s because I think that means you don't have any room for improvement. And I think we all have room for improvement. And I said, okay. So I was expecting at least threes the rest of the way down, because I was full of myself and I felt like I was going to be super strong in all these areas, because I felt like I was a really great leader. I got scored the lowest on delegation. And I was confused by that, because I thought that by doing things myself, that made me a stronger person, that would show my superiors that she's a go-getter, she can get it done herself, all of this stuff. And he was the first person that really showed me that not delegating is a weakness. And
the other thing I learned from her interview was using inclusive rhetoric within the workforce and also in your daily lives. But it's a useful tactic to boost morale. When a superior in an organization uses words like "we" and "us," it helps others lower on the totem pole feel included and can help them be more motivated, and also help them realize the impact that they are making.
This was my first spot in Dallas. And he was several lines ahead of me in supervision. He was clearly my boss. And when we would be at meetings, when we would be at community events, he would introduce me as, "This is Stacy Bruce, we work together." And I used to, just those words made a difference to me, because actually I worked for him. And so I would say, "Well, I work for you." And he was like, "No, you don't work for me, we work together." And just twisting those words, that was something that I've continued to do ever since, because that made me feel like we were in it together, not me working for him. So that was important.
And yeah, that wraps up everything the main things that I took away from the interviews. And I thought it was a really good I guess chain of assignments that get a wide variety of different viewpoints. And yeah, I thought it was very informative.
Okay, so I guess that will wrap up our presentation for group 3. And